Power chords are the most important chords that exist in rock music. I mean, everyone uses them, from the Beatles to Tool, from Van Halen to My Chemical Romance, and for great reason. They're really useful for getting that powerful and fat rock sound. But in playing around with them while writing some music, I realized some interesting things that I feel people don't really notice when using them. Yes, I'm mainly speaking to our very special punk friends who don't know anything beyond power chords, but hey, you might get a kick out of tuning in. But before we start, we need to first know the basics of power chords. If I take any note on the guitar, go up one string and 2 frets across, you get a power chord. The interval, or distance, between the 2 notes is a perfect fifth. And if I add my pinky on the string above my ring finger, I get a perfect eighth from my index. If I play this shape on any note, we get the same sound from each one of them, so it's really useful for building songs off of. What's really good about this interval, but really skimming the music theory, is that we get to have a really neutral but fat sounding chord, as it just basically builds on the root note, the bottom note, without making it major or minor. Take What's My Age Again by Blink-182. Playing it with a single note just makes it sound so much weaker without the extra kick of the power chord. And note that this is in a major key, this song, but it's not because of the actual chord itself, the power chords. No, it's actually because of the progression of the chords. This is all great and all, but every punk and their mother has used power chords. This isn't really earth-shattering. Well, this is where we start to think with power chords, or at least try to make them more interesting. If I take this power chord here and go one note down on the top string, I get a major 7 chord. This kind of works the same as a power chord, that I can use this shape up and down the guitar, but it always gives me that major 7th chord, which is obviously going to be sounding major. But we can kind of cheat with our songs and just make them sound more interesting by just changing my power chords into progressions with major 7s. There's no better example than Floaty by Foo Fighters. The verse in this song is literally just major 7 chords instead of power chords. But it sounds a lot nicer with them instead of just using power chords. I mean, the secret to that floaty sound is because he's just replaced power chords with major 7s. Yes, you can still use power chords, but the major 7s just make it sound so much more ethereal and nicer, even though they're essentially doing the exact same thing as power chords. All he's really done to get that is just changing one very small note on the thing and just had a massive difference on it. And it gives you a very important lesson, is that we can use power chords as a base and just change the chord slightly to make it sound a lot better. For example, if we go into drop D, we can play the sus2 chord very easily by just taking our power chord like normal and shifting up a pinky by 2 frets. We can also make it a minor chord by moving it up 1 position, and then make it a major chord by moving it up 1 more. That major chord is actually used by Kurt Cobain in a heart-shaped box, even though it's a little bit disguised. If I was to play the chorus, when I get to this bit, this part is actually just makes the D power chord into a D major chord. Now I'm going to take you on a journey on how I kind of figured this out with power chords. By accident, obviously. So I was trying to play Everlong and accidentally played this chord instead. Like, it sounds kind of Deftonesy. So I wondered where I could take this, because this chord sounded cool, and if I'm going to rip off Everlong without people knowing, this was going to be the time. To cut a long story short, I went with a basic 053 pattern because it's solid and nothing else was really working. And then I thought, okay, if all this Deftones chord is just extra notes on top of it, why don't I just go out easy and do a major chord on top of the 3rd and the 5th? For no other reason, they sound nice and it just worked with it. But then I thought to myself, why don't if I just change the position of the major 3rd and the 4th string to make them sound a little bit bigger? And you know, why not just do the same for that Deftones chord? I mean, it just makes them a lot bigger, fills them out a little bit more. Like, I figured, why not? There's no reason not to. And then I thought to myself, okay, why don't I just try and do open strings? Because if you just play the 5th open, or the 3rd open, it sounds really cool, that progression. So then doing a little bit of tweaking onto the main chord that I found out, I ended up getting this basically just using an F chord. And as a result, I got this way better chord progression that's just basically based off power chords. Obviously, this is one example. I'm just hoping that I was able to give you sort of an idea of what to think about when creating chords. I mean, I'm no expert by any means, mostly because my bro science music theory. But hey, I hope that helps. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time.